Hello and welcome to Optimal Game State. Today we're going to be talking about Warhammer, the old world role-playing game. So this is a brand new game, a brand new RPG coming from Cubicle 7 Games. We just have the player's guide at the moment. There is a GM's guide that's due to come out that we haven't quite seen yet. And I want to talk about this today because I was not convinced. I already have a considerable number of books for Warhammer the Old World. No, sorry, WHFRP, Warhammer Fantasy Role Playing Game. We don't have to call it that instead of the Old World. Old World used to refer to just, not Age of Sigmar and actually Warhammer. When they brought back the war game, in the new edition, they called it Warhammer the Old World. And when they did that, they set that 400 years prior to the classic version. The classic version basically was coming up to the end of days and then finished out on a big campaign where all the big bads destroyed everything and had a great fun while maybe the fans didn't enjoy it quite as much. Anyway, so that's Warhammer the Old World, and now we're doing a role-playing game with it. So this is the same setting as WHFRP, but 400 years earlier. Very, very strange. I was expecting him to release a source book, just detailing what the differences were, setting it back in the old times, and use the exact same WHFRP rules. So when they did this, my first instinct was, is it a bit of a cash grab? And you know what? It might be. Because core books sell so much better than anything else. And if they'd released this as just a source book, then it mightn't have sold it well. But I want to get through this book and I want to talk about why I think I've been convinced. And I will start by saying that this is basically the old edition. This is WHFRP 4th edition already, just different. Right, I'll get into it. I try explain it as I go in. All right, so we've got some backstory. We've got beautiful art. They always have amazing art in Cubicle 7 books. That never changes. Really characterful, and a lot of it is set in this Talagad area. Talagad, that is a typo. Actually, as an aside, one of the things that Cubicle 7 do is they release their PDFs before they print. So this is not going to go to print for maybe another 4 or 5 months, probably 2, 3. I don't know how long it takes. But what'll happen is they, in theory, let's go back up. Hopefully they credited proofreading. Yes, okay. They've credited some people for proofreading, but there's only so much you can do. If you can get a good editor, a good proofreader, they are worth their weight in gold. Maybe a better metal. Now, obviously, everyone has missed this. It's a minor detail. I didn't spot it the first time I read it through. I actually only noticed it when another reviewer was talking about it. But the point is, feedback will be given based on PDFs, and then they will get updated, and you'll get a notification on wherever you got it from. So often Drive Through RPG, but maybe the Cubicle 7 guys themselves. And yeah, they will update it, and then once it goes to print, it'll be a better version. Now, there will almost always still be some problems, still be some typos, but it'll be vastly reduced. And it is kind of an alpha version, and it's, if they could pay more and spend more time with more proofreaders, more editors, and maybe we wouldn't have the problem in the first place. But all that aside, just be aware that typos and issues are going to get resolved, and the actual version that you will be able to buy as a printed book is going to be a little bit better. All right, we're going to skip through a bunch of this. We don't need most of this. Okay, basics. I'm going to cover this really quickly. Let's look at... Okay, this is a character sheet. So you can see weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness, initiative, agility. That's reason. Reason's a different one. I think we had... was it intelligence before? And fellowship. So this is very, very similar to what you have. The list of skills is tiny by comparison. You only have 2 that match with each, so melee, defense, so on. The way the game works is you take a number of dice equal to your skill. No, yes, your skill. And your characteristic. Yeah, okay. The weapon skill and ballistic skill cause problem. But these are all characteristics, and these are all skills, I think. Yeah, characteristics and skills. And do we have an example of dice rolling? You roll the number of dice equal to your characteristic, and then you're looking for low numbers. So you're looking for numbers equal to or less than your skill. So in this case, they're rolling three dice, agility 3, and his leg skill is 5. So 4 and 5 are successes, and 7 is a failure. Really simple system. And then to modify difficulty, you add or take away dice, which is kind of nice. Now, there is one reason I don't like this, and I'll explain that in a second. You can math this out, and you can work out what the percentage of making this roll is. And that it essentially equates to the current version of Warframe that we have. So, this is an athletic skill and agility. So the agility might be 40, the athletic skill might be plus 10. So you then roll your percentile dice, you're looking to get 50 or less. And you can change the number. So the dice, the way you look at the dice, the way you math out what's happening, all of that is essentially can be boiled down. So a different system like this doesn't changes the feel of it, if that makes sense, rather than necessarily the outcome. So I just want to make that, because we're going to come back to this idea. Basically, they're doing Warframe, but doing it in a slightly different way, which is kind of interesting. One thing I don't like about this is modifications happened before. So if it's going to be difficult, you might take a dice away and then you roll it. If it's going to be easy, you might give them an extra dice and then they roll it. We are playing a regular weekly game of Warframe at the moment. We're about halfway through, maybe a little bit further, the Enemy Within campaign. So we're in Middenheim messing around. And at one point, the GM called for one of the players to make a roll because the player was doing something and they want to kind of find out. And they couldn't immediately work out what skill, what bonuses, and so on. So all they did was they rolled the dice and they got like a 70 plus, and they didn't even need to know what bonuses or penalties, whether he was doing it with his offhand, whether he was doing it from behind, whether he was getting assistance or any. They didn't actually need to know any of that because he just rolled a really bad roll, and they were immediately able to say, no, he failed, without working it out. When you had a situation where it was close, the GM occasionally would go, you know what, that's actually quite easy. Here, have a plus 20. Now you've passed. Don't worry about it. And the weird thing about it that kind of catches a lot of people is there can be a bunch of different modifiers and bits and pieces in it. As I said, we have a tendency to factor them in afterwards. So often, we'd the melee strike. Someone would swing with a hammer and they go, oh damn, I miss, and then someone else go, oh no, wait, you've got there's two of us against that one person, we're outnumbering them, so we actually had a bonus. We work out what the bonus is, we factor it in, and we go ahead. You can't do that when you're having to add and take away dice. Maybe add dice, you could give them extra dice, but you can't obviously take it away, which is kind of poor. There is an option to make it glorious or make it grim. If it's glorious, you get to re-roll all your fails, and if it's grim, you get to re-roll all your successes, which is grim. Anyway, my point that I wanted to make here is we have a bunch of skills. Sorry, we've got a bunch of characteristics and we have a bunch of skills, and they map out to a percentage of success. So that is exactly the same as we currently have in the game. So where else are we different? We have fate, so that's a system that does currently exist. XP, speed, blah blah blah, coins. Okay, this streamlines things. So I'm gonna skip through. We've got all different classes. No, origins. So this is the description of what they are like, and then there's a little bit of a numbers thing here. As with the previous systems, you can dice roll your way through everything, which is really, really nice. And for some of them, you do have the option of just choosing it instead. So maybe not these ones. Yeah, actually, skills start at 2, and characteristics are typically 2 or 3 from the earlier version. Apologies for skipping around all over the place. So lots of 3s, some 2s. They cap out at 7, I believe, in both, but realistically 6 is probably your max for many. These are roughly the same across each, which is interesting because in Warframe, the old version, or the current version, the elf is significantly better. They're just mechanically much, much, much better. Whereas here you can see the numbers aren't terribly different once you factor in faith, assuming faith is actually a characteristic. And yeah, you get a couple of extra bonus ones. So I think it's get 3. So your character is probably going to start with a bunch of 3s, maybe occasionally a 4, like your elf, or strength and toughness for a human might start out as a 4. They're not going to go further than 4 at the start. Those are going to be number of dice you roll. And then, have I got that right? Yeah. And then when you get into your characters, your origins, blah, 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 you can see here you get a bunch of skills. So skills are the difficulty. So initially your difficulty, everything is going to be rolled 1s or 2s. And then you get to raise some of these. So melee and toil for Bretonian, and then 2 other to 3. So all are going to be at 2 except for 4. And there's a total of, I don't know, what is it? It's probably maybe 8. How many skills do we have in total? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So you've got 16 in total. So those are all going to be 2s. So it's going to be difficulty 2. Okay, so we have a system. The system, you're going to fail a good chunk at the start because you're rolling 2 or 3 dice and looking for 1s and 2s, maybe some 3s is going to be pretty rough. But Fate will. It used to give rerolls. I was going to say it gives you rerolls, but it can make your rolls glorious before you roll them beforehand. This is your random career table. You can pick, and again, this is something that we've got in WHFRP, so there's not much of a change. And the reason these are numbered, and it's similar with the actual classes, is to kind of give a party that is more representative of what you would get in the game. You know, your shadow warrior is obviously going to be only an elf, but that's the chance they are as an elf. So what are they more likely to be if they're an elf? They equally scattered around these. Yeah, they kind of are. Is there any classes that are more prevalent? Well, roughly even, actually. Sometimes they make 1 or 2, like, you know, maybe your rat catcher is going to be a little bit more likely than others. Anyway, this is what a class looks like. So it's grossly simplified. You get a bunch of skill bonuses. So again, these are your difficulties. So being able to stack those up will be good. Lores are a great addition. So these used to be skills. You couldn't roll them because they were specialized skills until you got them. So often what you do is you'd get a single dot in it, and then it'd be your int plus that single dot. So if your int was 50 and you get a single dot of a lore of, you know, lore Bretonia, all of a sudden you'd have a 51 roll on it. And then, you know, that next 1% isn't much. I did hear one of the designers talking about how originally they intended that maybe you'd have certain knowledge that you'd have access to with 1 lore, and certain knowledge if you had 5, and different knowledge if you had 10. So there would actually be incentives to kind of push up. But this change is great. So it is basically an on or off. You have the lore or you don't have the lore, which is kind of how we were effectively playing it, which is clever. We have some trappings, which we've seen before. Assets and contacts are new, and I'll talk about those in a little bit. But then for career talents, we have this one special thing. So each talent has its own special quirk. This is new. Normally, the way the system worked is the careers gave you access to talents, and you would take the talents and it would give you access to skills, and you take the skills. That's gone. You know, that isn't an issue. That isn't a problem here. There's a bunch of other talents that we're going to be looking at. Which would be equivalent feats in DD. But this is the key part. There's one special ability. The only way you can have this special ability is by being an apothecary. No other way. So that's kind of a unique thing that sets apart. But there's a lot more freedom within the setting. Now, brass, depending on what career you are, it indicates where in the social strata you are. Brass is the lowest, silver is midway, and then gold would be the nobility. And midway would be like the merchants and burghers and maybe some soldiers and stuff like that. So I'm not going to get into an analysis of class politics. Arcane Wizard. Not to get too far into this, but interesting because the way the setting is, it is actually a different approach to the 8 Winds of Magic. They don't necessarily do it the same way, the structured way that they do it more from. This one's a little bit more opening. Now, of note within this, I'll talk about it later. I'll talk about it now. The magic system has changed. and I really, really like the way they do this magic system. Before you would channel to gather energy for a spell, reducing the cast number, and then you would cast, and those were two separate skills. And in this, they're doing it all off willpower rolls, so it's the same thing. And before, if you messed up the roll, or you got, I think basically if you got doubles, if you went bad and got doubles, or if you succeeded and got doubles, something bad would happen. In this, the way it happens is you're rolling your dice, you're trying to get low numbers. Every time you get a 9, so not zeros, but every time you get a 9, that goes to the side. And you count up, you keep a track of how many of those 9s you end up getting, and the more you get, the worse things get. And basically, if you're the higher level a wizard you are, the more you can get without something bad necessarily happening to you. I really like that idea, because, and it means you can cast your spell, but something bad can happen. It does mean when you're channeling, bad things can happen, and you can keep casting a lot of the time. But notably, what I've been finding happening with our wizard is they'll roll, something horrible is going to happen, and they're like, no, I don't like that. We're going to take the fate roll and we're going to re-roll again. So the chances of anything bad happening was relatively pretty minor. In this, you cannot re-roll those 9s. So if those 9s happen, it gets locked in. So, and this is what I want to talk about. This is why I'm quite enjoying reading through this book. That is the same basic system as WHFRP. You have a wizard, they channel, they cast, sometimes bad things happen, and here it's the same kind of system. They channel using the same skill, and then they cast. But they've kind of tweaked it, they've kind of improved it slightly, and I think a lot of this game has done exactly that. All right, so let's skip through. We've got a bunch of different ones. It's interesting the numbers that they are here. It's a trimmed down version, and obviously the way they've got it set up is different. Yeah, and they've taken from a few different books. Lots of different things going on. Okay. This is the contacts. So you roll a bunch of contacts, and this is kind of how Cubicle 7 expected things to go. I have only ever played WHFRP playing the Enemy Within campaign. I have never done it any other way. Uberstrike is the base setting for the Cubicle 7 books. There's tons of adventures in there. The box, which I don't have to hand, but I have somewhere. The intro box has lots of details on it, lots of fun stuff about the people. It looks like it was designed to be a place that you base yourself in, you go off for an adventure, you come back and you do things. And there are lots of mechanics like endeavors, which are things you'll do between adventures, that make sense in that context. But I think because people kept playing The Enemy Within, maybe all of those aspects didn't kind of kick in as much. This version of it, which is to be separate from The Enemy Within, as it were, really doubles down on that. So and we'll have to see once we see the GM's book, but it really looks like you're based in Talagard. These are the people you know in Talagard. So it's not just generic names, they're specific names. Gudrun Dockrulson, who will presumably have a write-up in a GM's book. We might see pictures of them in the intro box that they're going to do. They're names, they're people. So I think the idea with this one is to focus on a central area, go off adventuring, come back, experience life as part of this city, go off adventuring, come back, keep doing that. Here's some other bits and pieces for finishing out your character, but it's the assets we're a little bit more interested in. Okay, so split into brass, silver, and gold. Look at the kind of things you can get. A hand cart, a trade cart, or a coach. These all imply things about you. If you're gold, you've got a coach that you travel around with. You might have a theater that you sponsor yourself. You've got a library of your own stuff. Silver, like market stall, shop, tavern. These aren't going to be things you want to leave. These are going to be things you're going to be going back to. You're going to be investing in. You're going to be doing stuff. It sounds fantastic. And obviously, if you're poor, you won't have much. A rowboat, though, a leaky one, it might come in. A small shrine, a secret hideout. A key to an armory you're not supposed to have. Oh, that's kind of clever. Again, this is tying you in to the setting, could tie you into that Talangard, which I think is really, really interesting. So random rolls, you can use this with anything. These aren't have any mechanical effects. They're just an idea of what your character's like to kind of give a bit of flavor. Fantastic, love all that stuff. Some interactions. this often is quite clever. In our current WHFRP campaign, we decided we were all we all grew up in the same village, and there was definitely a CW teen movie kind of backstory to it. Two of the characters decided that they were cousins. We tied in things. That's just something that we naturally do as players who've been playing with each other for 20 years and are kind of used with how we do it. But having this element here where you can roll it up and kind of inspire that is fantastic and great. See, okay, Grimportant. Grimportant is, again, another idea around telling the story and having it based around that one city. Grimportant is essentially going to be your session one. It's going to be you and the other players are doing something bad happens, and that ties you together for the rest of the campaign. So it might be, I think the cover, of course, has a ambush by a bunch of beastmen. Maybe you encounter a necromancer. There's something going on in the Empire, something that you don't, that you suddenly, discover, something revealed to you that no one else is going to believe, that marks you for death, marks you for disposal. You know too much, so everyone in this party is going to be taken down and dealt with. So that is something that you can that will bind the group together, which I think is very clever, and will kind of set the campaign overarching thing. We don't really know what this is going to look like. We've just got a bit of an idea here, but I think it's really going to get fleshed out in the GM's guide. But I think this is the idea of the overarching campaign, and your Grimportant is going to start it off, and then as it plays out, we're probably going to see that develop, and yeah, things get worse. All right, this is advancement, experience. So experience, you get 1 XP for a session of play. WHFRP, you get 100. And this is just a simpler way of doing it. So like the numbers are basically condensed. So you do increase your characteristics and you can get new talents. What you don't, here's your maximums. What you don't do, which is quite interesting, is you don't increase your skills. So the skills are that 1, 2, 3 roll under number. Instead, we look at endeavors. Now, endeavors are all the things you do during your downtimes. So do we have it here? All right, we're going to skip past the abilities. I think we kind of know what these are. Like awareness is for being aware of things. Athletics is for athletic things. Stealth is for stealthy things. And then we've got a bunch of talents, which all by themselves are interesting. They do requirements, but they're not locked into classes, which is kind of cool. You might have to get agility 4, which will be easy for some classes. You might have to have musician's gear. There are some that are specific to, an actual origin story, or maybe certain stuff that you can only get in certain ways. Anyway, we're going to skip past those. Like these are something that you should be familiar with from every other game ever. These are talents. These are feats. We've talked about lures. What are we looking for? Environments, trade lures. Okay. Status, equipment. Okay, let's get back. What was I talking about? I was kind of expecting it to be right there in front of us. Apologies. Oh, I was talking about experiencing up, and we're talking about endeavors. So, okay, so I guess I'm going to go to 132. Okay, these are endeavors. So these are things that you can do in downtimes. So banking money, which we need to go back and talk about. Changing a career, craft stuff, formalize spells. Anytime you use one of these, and I think you get up to 3 maximum. It depends on the number of sessions you had between adventures. But typically, if an adventure is going to take 3 or more, you will get 3 downtime actions. It's just stuff you're doing and kind of breaks between them. You pick 1, 2, 3 of these, and anytime you roll one of these skills to try get a success on it, every fail gets a tick mark next to that skill. And after you get so many tick marks, then you get to improve that. Very, very cool idea. So I've seen this with Call of Cthulhu. There's a lot of other games where you do it. Where normally you would, when you take the activities, you would check it. And it does have some kind of weird scenarios where you'll actively go out of your ways to use abilities that you maybe don't necessarily make sense, just so you can get the tick mark. In this year, it's a little more limited. It's a lot more clever, I think. And it kind of gives you an idea of what you focus on. So you could take all of these, Alternatively, there is a specific one which is practice skill. So you're going to be using whatever skill it is, and the benefit of this one, as normal, you get to make your tally for each failed, but you get to do an additional one because you're taking this endeavor specifically. Very, very clever idea. Simplifies the XP system. You're only XPing up your characteristics, which are the number of dice you roll, and maybe your talents, and maybe your lures. And that's it. Very, very cool. I quite like that. All right, let's go back a bit. Where were we? I'm going to say we're like 50. No, we've done all these. We're further down. So we were talking about the abilities. We talked about the different lores. We talked about the traits. Trait lores. Okay, equipment. This is quite interesting because, again, going back to WHFRP, they do have this in the system. So you get some cash, and then between your ventures, you have an opportunity to make some endeavors. And if you don't, or once you finish, all your money's gone away. So that is something that was in the previous version, but again, because most people play the Enemy Within campaign, in which there's a point where you just get a ton of cash, and you're like wealthy merchants for a while, which is a lot of fun. But it doesn't really make sense for a rat catcher. And the way they do it in this system is during each downtime, your coin resets to 3. If you are a gold class, if you're gold status, you get 3 gold coins. If you're silver staff, that's 3 silver. If you're copper, that's 3 copper. Significant difference. But that's just your in between doing stuff points. At the end, you do have an opportunity to spend out. So if you want, you can get like a shiny piece of armor. You can get a new sword, even if maybe that isn't necessarily something that as a brass level you would get. Okay, so yeah, there we go. To get it, there is a activity you have that will let you what do you call it? That will let you buy stuff, get new gear. But the idea is that they've simplified the system so you're not tracking the total number of gold or total weight of gold that you have, and you just have that a little bit simpler. Okay, so let's move on. Melee weapons. Very close to what we are already experiencing with WHFRP, and notably, all of these are giving benefits in other places, which is quite cool. So you got like stealth bonuses, athletics bonuses, toil bonuses for harvesting resources. Yeah, your pickaxe is going to help you with that. That's pretty cool. Okay, we will talk about staggered. We'll talk about the defense and the melee a little bit later. It's interesting, but they've added a little bit of color. They've made them a little bit more interesting. I thought that addition with the different skills was very clever. And they've also done it with clothing, which is awesome. So peasant's garb, rags. Well, not necessarily rags, actually. Rags would be, yeah. Peasant's garb is good worker's garb. Don't put that down. But it gives you a plus dice when you're trying to appear harmless, which is quite clever. Uniform gives you leadership tests. Good stuff. Actual bonuses, well thinking. Now, realistically, this is what's happening. It's just about maybe it's the wording. It's just about those 3. It's about your shield, your light armor, and your heavy armor. And it's a relatively simple system. It's going to give you resilience +1. Oh yeah, and then you're getting your toughness anyway. I guess I'm not sure why they have it phrased like this, but I guess if you just had a shield and didn't have any clothing, you wouldn't get your toughness. Let's not dwell on that too much. All right, where are we? Bits and pieces, trade, tools, services, normal stuff, animals. Is there anything in here? Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of running at things, running at assets. All right, these are rules. This is actually getting into it. So we've already talked about the dice system. Again, we currently have a percentage system in WHFRP. This is a dice pool system, but you can math it out into percentages. And, on that regard, it's basically the exact same. This is a full description of all the skills. Helping. You can help. Okay, so you make a test, and for each success your ally scores, they gain +1. Now, this is really good. And this is something that you will need to be using. So if you've got 4 dice and maybe you've got a skill of 3. So 1 and 3 is going to help. So you get 1 or 2 dice out of that, and then you're able to hand those over. Like that actually ends up being a lot, um, comparatively. So if you were rolling 4 dice, and now you're wearing you have 5 dice, that's a big jump, is what I'm saying. In the previous system, you got a plus 10. And that was it. So not that much, but this can be significant. Now, it does say if the GM determines it appropriate. But yeah, you might have like you will probably have combats where you will be looking to help your main damage dealer rather than necessarily actually do some damage yourself. But we'll have a look at that in a second. Okay, outcomes. 0 success is failure. 1 is a marginal success. So it does say that the GM can choose to add a complication, which is interesting. We are getting into a period in time when we're seeing a lot of this kind of dice system where you have rather than just success and fail, instead you have success with bonus. You've got success with problem. You've got normal success. You've got failed. You've got fails with problems. You got just a little more granular, a few more options. It's kind of interesting. Anyway, so this gives you that system if you want, but you don't have to do it every time. One of the games that we were playing, I it always had a complication, and I, as a GM, when I was doing it, I struggled to come up with something new every time. So I appreciate that this is a may and not a must, which is kind of nice. They get a list of things, which is kind of nice. Okay, let's skip further. Fate has changed slightly, but it's still the same. Okay, so spending fate, you can make it a glorious test, and that's before you roll it. Normally we would use it to re-roll. And you can get a second action. Now, that is just spending. Your second action cannot be the same as a first. Oh, okay. So it's not an extra turn, it's just an extra action. Oh, that's kind of cool. Tactical retreat. And then Burning Fate is the bigger one. So, yeah, near miss. This is where when things go bad, you do your near miss. They've got other options in there, but again, this is kind of similar to what we have. We don't have resilience, which is fine. That was just kind of a different differentiation to it. Just having fate is straightforward and fine. And battlefield. So this is the structure that they have. This is common in a couple of the Cubicle 7 games. I don't really know how I feel about this because we often play games in this way, in the kind of theater of the mind naturally, without necessarily plotting it all out. So when we burst into a room, we'll say that okay, X and Y are in the previous room. It was A and B were the ones who burst through. B immediately charged intimately with whatever the target was, whereas A stayed back a bit. So we've kind of divided ourselves into 2 different rooms there, and into kind of 2 zones in that other room. But what we didn't do is we didn't map it out. So I'm not sure what to think about actually mapping things out like that. When correctly done, this can be fantastic. If you're trying to play loose and fast, it can be a little bit of a frustration. And when you've got abilities that say you can move 1 zone or move 2 zones, all of a sudden your GM has to then tell you what those zones are, what the options are, and so sometimes for me, I do actually like a more kind of tactical and a more abstract, and this is kind of a midway, forcing me into being more tactical when I want to be more abstract, and more abstract when I want to be more tactical. But it is actually a great system. We have played with this idea before. I just think it means the GM needs to take a second to lean forward and start mapping out some zones and try at least get it in. And sometimes not necessarily all the zones, and just kind of expand them out as you go along. All right, combat actions, hazards. Okay, attacks. Make an attack roll. You roll the dice, and then you count the number of successes. The defender then rolls their dice and counts the number of successes. So same as we currently have. Whoever has the most successes, or if the attacker has the most successes, they hit. Okay. Then they work out if they're able to overcome the resilience, the defense of, or not, yeah, the resilience. Resilience is your toughness and whatever your points in armor and shield are. And the defender needs to do damage, which often will be strength plus or minus a number, plus the number of successes over the contested roll that they got. So if they win the roll by 2, they're going to be adding 2 to their strength, which might be 3, and then maybe an extra 1 for a sword. So they're going to be doing 6. They then compare to the defender. So if the defender has and shields and light armor, that's going to be 2. And if they have toughness, base toughness of 3, then the 6 is 1 more than the 5, so a wound happens. If they don't, if they've got like, yeah, even if they have 4, if they've got 4 toughness, so 6 versus 6, they haven't beaten them. And your target ends up staggered. So the idea with staggered is once you've been hit, you're a little wobbly. If you have staggered and get staggered again, you remove the staggered, but then have to replace it with something else. So your options are give ground. So you put a bit of space back, you move back, go prone. If you go prone, you're on the ground, you're going to need to take a move action to get back up again. And then the third case is where you take a wound. If you don't want to go prone, you don't want to give ground, or you are already backed up against a wall, so you can't give ground. You're already down the ground, you're already prone, so you can't do either of those. You have to then take a wound. Now, after you've taken staggered, you lose staggered. So it's an interesting mechanic, and that only applies when you haven't been hit. And again, in the old system, if you hit them but you weren't able to do much damage, you would always do 1 damage, which is kind of what that reflects. Okay, so prone, wounds. Okay, and if you manage to do over their resilience, over they're doing more damage than their resilience, you do a wound. Now, okay, what page are we on? We're 121. I go to the end. This is the table you roll on. So if you get a wound in, you roll a d10, okay? And then you end up doing one of these. So superficial, nicked arm, battered leg. This is something we had before. But the difference with this is we weren't, in the other system, we'd have one for each body part. And here it's just kind of spread out. I mean, it's much and much. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't mean that you can't necessarily target a particular body part. That's interesting. But we don't need that necessarily, that level of complexity in this game. So you make a roll. And, if you roll a 6, you've got a stomach blow, you spluttered, gas, wind knocked out you, you're drained until the end of your next turn. I don't know what drain does. And then if you get another one, you can see you roll an extra d10 for each untreated wound you have. So you're going to be rolling 2d10. So you could end up in that bracket, or you could end up rolling a 20. What's 20 give us? A severed arm. Arm is gone. Oof. And then if you hit the third time, and if they get over 27, you get decapitated. Pierced heart. A lot of bad, horrible situations here. So the system is very interesting in that you're only trying to get on this table as much as you can. And that's why they put it at the back of the book, to make it really easy to access. And yeah, you're never gonna you're not gonna have 30 hit points that you have to slowly wicker down. Instead, you're going to nick their arm first, then you're going to have their ears ringing, and then you're going to bisect them, which is very cinematic. But could also be quite terrifying, because it is very binary. I mean, it's not binary in that there's a bunch of things, but like you could get a crushed rib straight away, and then straight after that, it's set blackout. There's bad things that can happen to you quite quickly and quite fast. Let's head back to 121. And then healing, you need to catch your breath. So we've done away with the points, the wound points, or the hit points, which I think is cool. I think I like. Okay, there's a bunch of conditions, which is kind of normal. And the resilience part is why I was saying earlier that it might be in your advantage to try, if you've got 3 people wailing on a troll, or like a heavily armored orc or something like that, something that's really, really tough. What you'll end up doing is you'll end up giving them a lot of stagger conditions. So maybe you'll stagger them, maybe the second one will go in, and then they'll remove the staggered condition, and they'll have to move back, or they'll have to go prone, or they'll have to take a wound. And there can be maybe some tactical options where you'll surround them so they can't give ground, or you'll back them up against a wall. And if you can get them down already, that might be ways. So even if you're not managing to hit them, you're going to be able to double up that staggered condition. Alternatively, what you can do is you can try help, and if you're able to, disorientate, to kind of distract from the defender, so your buddy's able to get more. You're going to roll your dice. You're going to get so many successes. You're not going to oppose them against. Well, maybe you'll oppose them with defense. I don't know. Depends how. I'm not actually sure how that works. But in theory, if you're going to be helping, if you're just using the helping rules, you're going to give your buddy more dice, and when they roll, they're going to have more successes, and those extra successes are going to add on to the strength for extra damage. And then once they get past the enough damage, are getting past the resilience, and then they can actually do the wound. So, yeah. Or do you go for the staggering, like, two people chaining each other? Actually, I didn't do initiative. The initiative is really simple. Players always go first, but then it's back and forth alternating. And I think you roughly divide it in. So if you've got 20 enemies and 5 players, player 1 will start, then 4 4 enemies will attack, and then you do it back and forth like that. So it's clever, nice and simple. I like actually initiative things where the players get to work out their own order, because it's kind of fun. To go, no, you should go first because we can do this, and then we can do this, and then that'll happen. Oh, that'd be cool. Okay, so we've done wounds. The combat system is very interesting. I don't want to speculate too much on it, because I think it's probably one that's easy to play out, and it might have a lot to do with talents. It might be particular talents that are interesting. Okay, so we got some social rules. This is between adventures. So we've talked about downtime. We've talked about coins. We've talked about endeavors. So stuff between downtimes. This is a bunch of background. Okay, so I'm skipping over it, but there are rules for religious things. There are bonuses you'll get with a hammer if you've got faith in Sigmar. There's a couple of prayers you could do, and then there's a generic idea around what miracles you could do. So there's a system for that. It is simplified based on what is currently existing. And once we get into it, we're going to be skipping into the magic. Here we go, big Bernie thing. The magic one is very, very similar to what we had before. I did talk about it. So rather than doing a channeling and then a casting roll, you do a single roll, but you will be channeling it over turns. But it just means rather than splitting into 2 different skills, which I think is very, very cool. Like you can make currently once you decide to cast, you roll your casting, and then I think, can you choose not to take the successes? But with this one, you can choose, but then holding on to a spell longer can cause problems and increase chance of misfire. There's also a very, very clever way of doing your own spells. So let me see, do we have it here handy? So there's a list of spells, formal spells. Okay, formal spells, and then there's also improvised spells. There's a very, very old book. So it was a D20, so 3.5 version of The World of Darkness by Monty Cook, I think it was, did it. And it was very, very clever, because it took the stat blocks for D&D spells and then gave you a way to actually quantify them and then put them into make brand new ones on the fly, was basically what the players have to do. And it's what you're able to do with this. So let me see, do we have the details here? So yeah, so here's some details around what the effect is, and an idea what the casting value is. The thing about it is, these are very, very hard. To do stuff, to do the improvised magic, gives you a lot of flexibility, lots of great things you can do, and I think it's a fantastic addition to the class. Rather than locking you into just 3 or 4 things you're casting all the time, you can now literally do anything you want, but it's very, very hard. Now, because you have the system where you are building up your successes and you're able to do that over multiple turns, you are able to get away with doing most things if you have the time. So, our wizard is a Metheist wizard, so a death wizard. And she can do some pretty, pretty terrifying things. But with this version of it, she'll be able to do lots of different small things. And a lot of them outside of combat as well, because a lot more outside of combat, because obviously you're got a little more freedom. But the longer something takes a cast, the more the risk of getting 9s are and miscasting. So just because you're able to take an hour doing a spell doesn't mean you can get away with doing like a master level spell, because you are going to pick up those miscasts, and eventually it might blow up in your face. But the fact that you can do this, I think is very clever. I love this idea. And then once you've got a spell that you kind of like, you can formalize it, and there are the rules for turning it into to halving the casting values on it. So there's going to be lots of options. The Lords of Magic are slightly different to what we're used to. I'm not going to dwell on that. It's kind of a backstory element. Is there anything else to do? Just necromancy. Oh my god. Which is distinct from dead magic. A lot of stuff about the back lore. I love all this. This is all good stuff. And then we get to the end. So I'm going to go to the first page. I'm going to give us a nice picture. This is the same game. This is WHFRP. Okay, this is WHFRP 4th edition. But they've simplified things. I don't know. When people say simplify things, they often mean dumb it down. This game mechanically is easier to grasp, I think. Oh, is that wrong too? The numbers you're looking at are like 1s and 2s rather than 10s and 15s and 20s. The XP you get is in 1s and 2s rather than in hundreds. You're rolling dice and then you're just counting the number of dice that got the numbers rather than doing a quick calculation to see the difference between your skill and the tens dice. That's what I mean. So it is the same game at a raw essence, because any roll you make can be condensed down to percentiles. The skills are reduced, but realistically, like if you were to tally all of the skills that you yourself or a GM calls for or you roll, they are a fraction of the total list anyway. So this list probably gets the job done, even though it feels to me a little bit slight when I'm used to looking at the WHFRP page. They have taken some of the rule sets like magic, and I think they have improved it. They've streamlined it, and they've been able to do a lot of that because they're free from what I want to call the baggage of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. God, there's the names. In addition, they have finally managed to free themselves from the Enemy Within campaign. You could do the Enemy Within campaign with this rule set. I mean, you'll have to do a lot of conversion, and I don't think it's worth the effort. Like, just play normal Warhammer. That means you are gonna more often than not be playing this with Talagard as your base setting. You're gonna be doing the grim portents about what bad things are happening, and hopefully the James book will give us lots of stuff on that. We are going to be doing short adventures. We're going to be staying at home. We're going to be taking care of our pub, our inn that one of us has and is running, and it constantly goes back to the idea. So, and actually, we talked about the different metal ratings, the different social ranks. You will fit into that social rank. Like, just because you went out adventuring, you're not going to be able to hold on to that 1,000 gold that you got your hands on. If you're brass and you don't do something with it, like spend it or invest it or bribe someone with it, you're going to lose it all. You're gonna get conned out of it. You're gonna drink it all away. You will have family and friends who will have debts that need it'll disappear, and you're back down to brass. You will play brass until you change to a career that gets you into silver, which is weird for adventurers, but actually makes sense kind of a story perspective. So we are always going to be coming back to our home base. We're going to be interacting with our contacts. We're going to be trying to work in our normal day-to-day lives. I think that's it. I think this is going to be much more about adventuring and then going back to the real world, rather than what we currently have in WHFRP, which is we start off as rat catchers, and then we become something else. We become heroes, we become adventurers, we become murder hobos. And that's fine. That's definitely a way to play, and definitely a way I enjoy playing. But this is very interesting. It is WHFRP, as I said, but we are going to be playing it the way they intend. We're going to be playing with endeavors, we're going to be playing with assets, and that's pretty cool. So, yes, originally, when I was talking with my friends last week about this, I was a little dismissive of it, but, after some encouraging comments, I did spend the time to read through it, and I've been quietly impressed. I think this is a very cool game. It has the core elements of WHFRP, so if you're a WHFRP fan, this is the same game. But it's again, I don't want to say simplified. Um, I guess it's like the house that's just had a bit of a makeover. The core engine of it looks. It was a car engine. I'm not sure what metaphor I'm going from. The core of it is basically the same underneath, but it's looking a little prettier. It's looking a little bit easier to get a handle of. And that's pretty cool. So I am very much looking forward to when the GM's guide comes out. I do want to see the box that comes along with this because I suspect we're going to be starting the adventure in there. And this is a key part, it really needs to have an adventure book, an adventure campaign, or series of things to go along with it. Because one of the great things about WHFRP is the Enemy Within campaign. That is 6 fantastic adventure books, and then another 6 companions to go along with those adventure books, so you can expand it out, and then years of history going along with it. So, yeah, hopefully they think about something for that rather than just doing essentially a player's guide and a GM's guide, and then hoping for the best. This system is good. I am, and the style of the game has some great potential, and yeah, I think they've done a pretty good job. Anyway, that's me for this. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for making it all the way to the end. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Each week I put up a new video talking about one of Games Workshop's specialist games. The goal is always to try and make the best possible two-player experience. If this is something you'd find interesting, please subscribe to the channel and comment to let me know what you'd like to see in future.